Again, it's just acknowledging where you're weak at and where you're strong. You can only train so much into certain things. Like if I'm a bad runner, I can only make myself that much better of a runner, where you can have some people who's naturally just a natural runner and you can train them to be better. So it's the same thing with hiring people in your companies to say, if we make sure you have the right butts in the seats, that's how you're able to free yourself up to do the things that you love.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money. So yeah, we got Kevin McLauchlin from Cadence SEO, ultra marathon runner, recovered alcoholic and addict. So switched the bottle for 1 million footsteps at a time to run hundreds of miles, which is pretty badass. And he and his wife developed Cadence SEO. So we learned a little bit about SEO in this podcast. We talked about overcoming some obstacles in building a business. Travis and I got to ask some like relatively selfish questions as they pertain to our own business. So yeah, this is a pretty valuable one for me. It was definitely helpful to hear about his hiring process and some of the things that he did to build Cadence to where they got it.
100%. Yeah, the hiring and firing and how key that is for growing a company. Especially anybody who's in like the solopreneur. I think that's a hard thing to get your head around, is like, can I afford it? Like, how do I do it? So yeah, it was cool to get into some of that.
Yeah. Hiring and firing is hard.
Yeah.
Like it's hard, like, especially in the beginning, it's hard to like admit that you need help. It's hard to see what you need help with. It's hard to believe that you can afford the help. And then if things aren't going well, dude, firing people's hard too. That shit sucks. Yeah. But Kevin had some good advice for us. So I definitely appreciate it. So I hope you guys appreciate it too. We'll see y'all inside. This is interesting to me. So I'm like, in looking at your bio, I feel like we're probably relatively similar here. Recovered addict, father of 6 kids. Awesome.
Yeah.
And now ultra marathon runner, and you and your wife have run Cadence SEO.
Correct.
And so the first thing I noticed is like, all right, recovered addict now does insane long distance races.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. Like now I'm a competitive bodybuilder.
Sure.
Like we need something like extreme to do. Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel that true. Like it rolls into your business, your personal life, all that?
Yeah, I mean it's a blessing and a curse in its own right. Like you should probably know with the bodybuilding and whatnot, the toll that it takes on your body to do things like that day in and day out. Actually coming off of an injury from doing 200-mile runs in 2020, that I messed up my back pretty bad because I wasn't doing any weight training or anything like that. So I kind of became just a really kind of a loosey-goosey runny guy because all I did was ran in 2020. So I've got a new perspective on it where I'm doing weights and doing the running now as well. But I've signed up for a 100-mile run in October to kind of take another swing at it, where with a newfound like body structure with some muscle and things like that. But yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel that when it comes to needing to have some sort of something there, right? I mean, the ultra running community is full of what you can almost kind of say in a way, some of the misfits that have turned themselves around, right? Like there's a lot of recovering addicts, there's a lot of recovering alcoholics, recovered, whatever, however you want to say it, right? There's different terminologies, different vernacular for it, but a lot of people do go towards that to keep themselves sane. I mean, it's there is a lot of insanity around addiction, right? Like when I was an active drinker, I would, hide bottles from myself, like in case, it's just, there's a lot of insanity. So when you take that whatever that is away and move into trying to fathom life without having that, whatever your drug of choice is, you fill it with something, and running was what was healthy for me. My children, so our family story is a little bit my wife and I have been married for 8 years, and she is a widow of she was a widow. She's still a widow, I guess. We're just married now, from an addict as well. So my kids have gone through a lot. What really got me into running was because I think he was 9 at that time. I married her. She has 5 kids. And they were always running to kind of deal with the loss of their father and deal with all that jazz. Right. So I was 250 pounds of not muscle,
Wow.
at that time, and decided that I asked my wife, I said, or said something about wanting to get into running, or wish I could do a race like that they were doing, like half marathons and stuff like that. So that's what kind of got me started.
Do it then.
Yeah, she did. She said for my birthday, her birthday, she wanted me to run a half marathon with her. So that's kind of where it all started. And she just did her first 50 miler too. So
that's awesome.
You guys are both badasses.
Well, we try.
Dude, I couldn't even do a 5K. I feel like I did a 5K one time. I couldn't walk for like 2 days.
That's funny.
I was gonna say I
had a good pace though. I had a really good time. I think that was why, because I didn't train at all. I had never done long distance running, and I basically like ran as fast as I could, and like it was like my body like let me do that, and then I was just like wobbly legs, like couldn't walk the next day.
That's interesting because I've been there. We look back at some of the hikes, because my family's full of a bunch of crazies. My wife's family, as far as running and stuff like that goes, and so they hike all the time. And the story goes down in infamy for my family. It's like my wife was carrying at the time I think a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old on her back, and I was struggling to hike up this little tiny hike. So that goes down in infamy with our family, because that was kind of the day, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be this 240-pound schlub. I want to get into shape and get to doing better. But there definitely is a need to have something to fill that gap or that void when it comes to past addiction and stuff like that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Did you meet your wife? When you met your wife, were you already sober or on that path, or did you start that when you met her?
Well, I was in some major legal trouble, and I should have been sober when I met. So I was not as sober as I should have been. I would say, for lack of better terms, I was kind of a mess. We were both a bit of a mess when we met originally. So it's kind of a not necessarily a rags to riches story, but we were both kind of messed up at that time. So, I mean, my wife was a saint. She used to pick me up because I didn't have a car. I had 3 DUIs, which is one of the reasons why I decided that drinking was not going to be my thing. And I didn't also want to, when we decided to get married was when I decided to hang it up and say, it's not going to be the life I'm going to live anymore. So, but yeah, I was using a pedal bike to maneuver around Phoenix for the year that she met me. The year we met, that's how I got back and forth to work, was either the bus or a bike. And I don't mean a motorbike. Mm-hmm. So and then it's just a thing now. We don't drink, and we don't do, we do extreme sports instead and do that kind of stuff. So she's a 2-time Ironman finisher and now an ultra runner as well. So
that's cool.
Kind of neat.
You guys really just kind of met and decided that you wanted and could do better for yourselves and started building yourselves up. It sounds like both physically, mentally, but also financially. You two started your company, Cadence SEO, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is so my wife was working as an SEO salesperson for an agency here in Phoenix, and kind of decided she thinks she could do it better for a little less expensive and give real work. So long story short, there's a lot of the story there to give, but this is kind of our second go around with an agency. Our first one was either here nor there, but it's our second go around with an agency. Cadence SEO is kind of a play on words with the running and cycling and all that other stuff, the cadence aspect of it. So we started this back in 2020, and kind of taking her vision of doing things the right way in a space that can be kind of filled with some smoke and mirrors and some other things that, you know, maybe aren't as desirable from the other side of things. So so that's how we got started here. And so just a commitment to do things different. And we realized kind of early on that it was kind of hard, you know, to go work for somebody and have 6 kids and, you know, want to do the things that we want to do. So it made the most logical sense to run a company. You know, when we started this rendition of it, we had no idea where it was going to go, what it was going to be. You know, we were even potentially fine with, you know, 1 or 2 clients and maybe 5 clients and just have it be her and I, but that's not what ended up happening. We're in a much different position now than what we had envisioned when we started. So
yeah, what do you attribute that to, and what are you guys doing differently that you see most other SEO companies missing?
So, I mean, early on, we first and foremost, I mean, our Christy and I both are very growth focused when it comes to building a business and getting clients and stuff. I think a lot of times a lot of companies might focus a lot more on the procedural aspect of things and forget to kind of, you still need to market yourself. You still need to grow. You still need the ability, you know, you have to have more clients to be able to improve your working, and you have to have more experience, and you have to have people. It takes people on the ground. We have, admittedly, some of our downfalls are some of the process related aspects of it. So we hired somebody who's exceptionally good at process. You know, so, but most companies that I've kind of talked to or experienced, they put so much time and effort in either client work or retention's important, obviously, holding on to the clients that you get, but they forget that you still need to grow as a company if growth is what your goal is. So focusing very forward on sales, marketing, building a brand, building brand knowledge, so on and so forth has been really, I think, where we've strived and thrived, and then which allowed us to, you know, hire a team that can do amazing work on the back end. So but without growth,
you got to kind of have that balance, right?
Yeah,
you need like the sales, forward moving, getting new clients, growth, but then because that's the issue I have right now, is it's like I've been doing a lot of growth and I just like suck at like the systems and processes stuff, and I don't, you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh shit, like this is starting to kind of hurt me. So I need to maybe slow my attention down to figure that out. And I was just going to ask you kind of like a selfish question or a question for me, but what do you mean by you hired someone to handle like processes?
That
like,
was going to be my question too.
What does that look like?
Because
I've heard that from a number of people. Like, what is that?
Well, yeah. So when you talk about process, right, we're talking about, and it could be any particular process. It could be your sales process, could be your deliverable process, whatever it is. Like, you know, I think Travis, in your case, it'd be like coordinating your teams and getting all those details in order. You know, everybody has their strong suits when it comes to people who you work with, people who you talk to day in and day out. You know, some of the most successful business people out there acknowledge that my strong suit is not process. It's like hitting the ground running and say, okay, we run the growth leg, right, of it. Well, most people that are really big on hyper growth and sales are not the most organized individuals. They thrive on the chase, and they thrive on that. So putting that person in charge of your processes is a really bad idea, because that's where there's going to be a lot of cracks and things that fall. Where on the other side, we have I guess she's our chief operating officer now, and then also a project manager, who are very meticulous and very big on making sure that processes are followed, and that that processes are in place when it comes to getting deliverables done on time and tracking productivity and things like that. Where if you look at a salesperson, that's going to be hard to get that stuff done.
For sure.
Because that's fine. You can put a sales process in place. They're going to follow it loosely, and they're going to do whatever it is to get the sale done. Where you have that process person, so it'd be somebody who is into project management, or is into just being a meticulous individual looking at. But again, it's just acknowledging you're strong, where you're weak at, and where you're strong. It's like, you can only train so much into certain things. Like if I'm a bad runner, I can only make myself that much better of a runner, where you can have some people who's naturally just a natural runner, and you can train them to be better. So it's the same thing with hiring people in your companies, to say, if we make sure you have the right butts in the seats, that's how you're able to free yourself up to do the things that you love.
So it's almost kind of like a business partner in a way, when you're like if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur or something, like maybe you're looking to hire someone, but I guess the mentality is kind of almost more like a business partner, because you wouldn't, if you were starting a company, you wouldn't necessarily you're like a very sales driven person. You wouldn't really necessarily need another sales driven person. Maybe you need an operational type person. Correct. So it's kind of like that in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I need you to come in here and help me build this company.
And basically finding somebody that, it's funny, because I think in some cases we have employees that are committed, just as committed as us, into kind of the whole goal. And it's building that culture of that commitment, whether it's a business partner or an employee. Some people aren't big on being a partner or wanting to be on the legal paperwork or things like that, but they will partner with you. I almost every employment aspect of it is a partnership in a way, and then you include them into your kind of your vision and your goals and those sorts of things, because they can help the process to get there. So yeah, it's 100% a partnership. I almost envision anybody signing on to work for us as a partner in crime, I guess, in that matter. So
yeah. So how do you find these people, and when do you know you're in the stage to bring in someone like that?
So it's hard to find people. I mean, a lot of these have gone through relationships that we've had for a long time. It is hard. It's like trying to say, how do you meet a new friend, right? Where do you go? It's like, we're not going to hang out at the bar or the library. It's like, but it's hard to find. Like, I will say that's one of the hardest things as a business owner, is to find talent and people that you trust. I mean, you can only go as deep into your own personal network as possible to pull people out. Now, that being said, we have also hired family members. Our chief operating officer, we've been together with, my wife used to work with her at her previous job. So, but how do you know when you're in a place to hire somebody? I would say is when you realize that you can't do it all. Like when you realize that things are falling or you feel overwhelmed. There's always the fiscal side of things too. Like, how do I afford to hire somebody? You always have to ask yourself, can I afford not to? Right? Like, if I was to free myself up from having to do all the paperwork and all the billing and all the other stuff, would I be able to grow my company further? And so you have to ask yourself, okay, can I afford to hire somebody, and at what cost? And secondly, can I afford not to? If I continue this way, is my company going to go to where I want the company to go, just by my will and skill alone? And if the answer is no, then you need to get some feelers out and find somebody who'd be willing to walk alongside with you and take that journey with you as well. Because you can you can analyze. One of our biggest things that we've done, I think, differently is we haven't gotten stuck, and it hurts sometimes too, but we haven't gotten stuck in this analysis paralysis, right? Like trying to overanalyze our situation. Hey, we need somebody. Do we need somebody today? Then let's go find it and get it done. Like, could we be better if we hired somebody to do this instead of us just doing it? And then acting. Like action is one of the biggest things that stop companies from, lack of action is what stops companies from growing or becoming stronger. It is like, there's the fear of, well, if I hire somebody, what if it's the wrong person? So what? Fire them.
Yeah.
Not to sound rude, but if you hire the wrong person, you acknowledge it in a couple months and say, okay, that's the wrong person, and we move on, find somebody else. But knowing where your limitations are, and most visionary folks, people who lead companies, are also kind of on that a little bit loose in the kind of off the rocker a little bit, because the visionaries can't necessarily put them all to work. Like using Henry Ford as an example, he didn't know how to build an engine into a single block, but he knew that it could be done, and he hired the engineers to do it. So
yeah,
most companies kind of, I think, fail at that as they try to hold it all to their own and realize that, that's where you're going to stay. That's just where you're going to stay.
Yeah. Yeah. Elon Musk and the Apple guy. I don't know, I'm blanking on his name. Steve Jobs. Yeah. They're kind of like famously that way too, and I think like maybe those people get some shit sometimes because they're like, look at this thing I invented. And it's like, well, you did have a team of like 20 engineers that like, but it's like, yeah, that's the role. Like,
right.
It's why no one can do all that by themselves. Like that person is like the CEO or whatever is just like a job. Basically you're filling a role, and other people are too.
Yeah. And typically that's where the visionaries are, is at the lead. You have a visionary, you have somebody, and then you have all the support staff behind you. And that's just as important if you want to grow something.
Yeah. And those people might not have been able to like come together to do that thing on their own without you. And then you wouldn't be able to do it without them.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the hard part is trusting, especially I know like in your case where it's your company, you're building something, you're growing something, you got to be able to delegate and trust that the people that you hired and put in place are doing the right thing. That's the hard part.
Yeah. And you also have to trust, that they know how you want it done, that you have a good like standard operating procedure for that thing. Because I think a lot of times as business owners, when we first start, growing our business and it's just us as a solopreneur, when we bring somebody on to do a job, we're like, okay, now I got to teach this person how to do what I do. How do I do what I do?
Yeah.
Like
how,
yeah, you have I've never had to explain it before.
Yep.
So that
exactly.
Can be challenging.
Like, how do you do it? How do you do it? Well, I don't know. To be honest, I have no idea. Like I just did it. Like, when people ask us all the time, how do you grow? How did you grow your company from, a couple clients to now we have 70 clients? And, how do you, I don't know. I just worked my ass off and did it. Like, and that's, if I was to sit down and say what changed things or what made things different, is that the only thing that I think we do different is that we take action and we do it fast. And then sometimes you have to clean up the mess that causes. It happens. Sometimes you fall. That's one thing that ultra running has taught me. That's, if we're looking back at what doing hard things teaches you in life, is that you can't, as long as you're taking a step forward, one step at a time, like, and you keep walking forward. Like I'm telling you, when you're running 100 miles, never go backwards, right? Like you're never going to get there if you decide to go backwards. So that doing hard things is part of life. And sometimes it's just taking the next best step you can, whether it's one more step up the mountain, or if it's making one more sales call, or it's, one more interview, or, staying up a little bit later to finish one more account that that you're behind or something like that. But staying moving and activity. I love Grant Cardone for that aspect of it. I think he's a knucklehead too, but I love how he just talks, massive action. Like, and that's really the key to hitting any long-term goal, is that if you can sit and have 4 meetings on one aspect and those 4 meetings result in another meeting, then you're not taking action, you're going backwards. And if you're not moving forward, you are going backwards. There's no standing still. And I learned in our space, particularly, like if we don't do it today, somebody's going to do it tomorrow. Like if I don't put this blog post out on this that we have right now, even though it's not perfect, because perfection is one of the biggest.
It's a vice.
What's that?
It's a vice.
It's a vice. And you plan for perfection only to plan for failure at that point. Like one of my favorite quotes is, Zig Ziglar says it all the time. I listen to that guy all the time. He's hilarious. But it's like, and I can't remember who he attested to, but it's like, you don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to start to get great to be great. Like take that step. Like if it's hiring somebody that you need, just do it. Like I know that Nike is the whole just do it thing, but there's something there that, if you need to do something, do it. Don't wait. Don't analyze it so much that you don't do anything. So, but ultra running taught me that. That's one of the biggest things, like, to not be afraid of things. It's really frightening to toe the line knowing that you're going to be running 100 miles over the next 30 hours. But once you get started and settle in, it actually feels pretty awesome. So
momentum, right?
Momentum, exactly. That's a relentless forward movement, regardless of what it is. So
how do you deal with those days where you do feel like you weren't productive, or like this was not a good day? Like how do you deal with that when you are like running an agency where things are like need to like keep happening? You know what I mean?
Like chalk it up as a loss and move on. There's going to be days. We're not going to be perfect every day. There's races where we toe the line that we just literally didn't have it today. Like, or it doesn't feel good. But tomorrow is another day though. And if you hang it up thinking that, hey, I did at least the best I could today, like, just yesterday. I mean, yesterday was a rough day for us as a company. We had to let somebody go. We had to, we had a couple of clients put in their notice. That happens. It's life. But if I think about that and I remember that, if I sit and, well, what did we do wrong? What did we miss? What did we do that? Yeah. Okay. Analyzing stuff. And then when the day comes to an end, lay your head on the pillow, wake up the next morning with a whole fresh new day. You can't dwell on things. Nothing is perfect in business ever. And, if you don't hit your goal that day, move on to the next day.
I got a question for you. You mentioned, you've talked a lot about hiring, and you've talked a lot about using your network and being quick to bring people on, but also being quick to let people go. So for those who hire inside their network, from inside their network, whether it's friends, family, do you find do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? Especially if you want to be quick to let people go if they're not doing a good job, and it may be difficult to remove emotion from the situation.
So I will say, even though I say it's important to be quick to let people go, we're not very good at it.
It's hard,
because
that's a hard conversation.
There's that emotional connection that you get with people, even though and you care about them and you realize it's just business. I do think, like my sister-in-law works for us. We have quite a few friends and I think only one family member per se that works with us, but I think you scrutinize those hires a little bit more than you do somebody off the street to say, hey, am I in a place with these people that if it goes south, will we still be talking after this? Like, I think that's definitely something that you have to do. You have to realize, hey, is this relationship on a level to where, like, hey, if I came to them and said, this isn't really working out, are we still going to be talking again? If you can't say that relationship is secure enough, then maybe don't hire within your network. If you value those people from that matter. And like, for example, with my sister-in-law, we had that conversation. Hey, if this doesn't work out, it's nothing personal, it's business, but it's hard. It's hard. But at the same time, sometimes just giving somebody a job who we've taken a lot of chances on people who on paper may not be the best person for the position. And there's a level of commitment that you get out of that as well. Yeah. Like, especially if, not saying that you always just need a body, but if you need somebody who is willing to commit to you and it's not necessarily the most technical, like I'm not going to hire my neighbor to run our camera crew, right, Travis? Like they've never ran a camera crew. But if you have tasks within your company, like one of our top account managers, she came to us, saw that we were hiring and said, hey, I'd like to be included in this conversation. Well, she didn't know anything about SEO. So we said, okay, maybe not this time around, but go do this, and this, read our blog, take these courses. If we have another opening soon enough, like we'll call you first and see if you've done all this stuff. And lo and behold, she did. And she's one of our best employees, and it was from past relationships and things like that. So you have to be selective in those circumstances, but I'm not against hiring family members, but there has to be some early scrutiny in the situation to say, okay, is this a safe and secure relationship that we have? Like that, if something goes down and it's not quite right, is it going to survive? And if it's not going to survive, don't do it.
I agree with that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know I'm a little bit short on time, Trav.
Yeah.
Do you have any last questions?
No, I think this was great.
This was
awesome to talk to you. Like, the story, your story is honestly inspiring, and you've got a lot for me to learn from on the kind of like marketing agency side of things and how to build all this stuff. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you want to, Travis, you ever want to sit down and talk off the record about how we actually did it?
Yeah,
I'd be happy to do that. So,
sweet. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Awesome.
As far as like even marketing tactics and things to grow without having inbound traffic. Because we've grown ours totally on outbound. So,
that's awesome.
So I'd be happy to give you some free tips.
Yeah, I would love to pick your brain about that.
Cool,
for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, just hit me up. Let me know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks, Josh.
I know our listeners are probably going to want to give you a follow and learn a little bit more about Cadence SEO. Why don't you give yourself a plug before we take off?
Yeah. So Cadence SEO, we're SEO agency, obviously. We do other things in the digital marketing space, not video production, but we do PPC, paid, some loose web development, things like that. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We have a blog that's constantly telling people great stuff about SEO. And that's who we are, cadenceseo.com. Follow us, check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kevin. We appreciate you, man. And thank you to everybody who tuned in to another episode. We will see y'all next week.